Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beecher Hicks. I am the President and CEO of the National Black MBA Association. I am pleased to welcome you to this Gold Key Fireside Chat. Today we have the distinguished opportunity to be here in Dallas, Texas at the Neiman Marcus Group, where we are with Mr. Darrin Rowe, who is the Vice President of Marketing Innovation. Darrin, I'm excited to be here with you, man, and thanks for having us in your home.
Excited to be here with you as well.
Yeah, man. So tell us, I'm delighted to be here. This place is fabulous. This facility is fabulous. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about where we are and about just kind of about this experience that we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in our Dallas hub, which is in Uptown Dallas.
Okay.
And it's a new space, a fantastic space. It's a great event meeting space, which we're sitting in at a beautiful atrium today. We also have a lot of cross collaboration offices and meeting spaces for our teams really to come together and work together. And so I use the space quite often with working with cross-functional teams, as well as some of our outside partners coming into the office just to get that face-to-face vibe.
Right.
So love the space. It's an absolutely amazing space for us to use.
Yeah, well, it is incredible to be here. So, again, really grateful that you would take the time to sit and talk with us and with our audience. And would like to know a little bit about you before we dive in and sort of get to the corporate business stuff. Want to understand a little bit about Darrin the man. Like, so what gets you up? What gets you motivated? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll start with number one. I'm originally from the Detroit area. Okay, so that's the vibe.
What up, though?
Yeah, what up, though? And I come from a family of four: older brother, mom, dad. And, my dad was very influential in my life.
Yeah.
He really kind of taught and preached, hard work, dedication, but most importantly, fundamentally, education.
Okay.
So I was privileged to have a father who actually had a master's degree in engineering.
Yep.
And that sparked this interest in education and educating myself. And that really is what led me down a path of, following his footsteps to become an engineer. And ultimately led me to University of Minnesota. And fast forward to today, I've been living in Dallas for 16 years, married, have two wonderful children, and just enjoying my career.
That's tremendous. So, but let's go back before we sort of jump into today. Let's help me understand, how did you get from Detroit to the University of Minnesota? And you mentioned, did your dad also have an engineering degree? Is that
he did? He did. So he was a civil engineer and a mechanical engineer. Okay. And I was really good at math and sciences. And he said, hey, this is a career where you can really accelerate yourself. You can do a lot of different things after you try engineering. And it really resonated with me when I was younger. And so I say, hey, you know what? Let me go try a tough, profession, a tough degree. And University of Minnesota actually had one of the top 5 chemical engineering programs in the country, which is a little, unknown.
Got it.
But I had the opportunity to go there and just have a great experience, get away from home, get out of my comfort zone a little bit. It's a very different environment than growing up in the Detroit area. But it was an absolutely great experience for me to really kind of transform how I thought about things.
Sure. And then when you finished University of Minnesota, you went south a bit to Cincinnati.
Yes.
Connected with P&G down there.
Yeah. So I had an amazing opportunity to work for a great training company.
Yep.
And what I mean by training company is a company that you walk in the door and individuals are going to train you not only in your technical function, but how to become a good leader.
Okay.
And so I was privileged to be able to do that. Now, the one thing that's interesting about working at Procter & Gamble is that everyone fundamentally works for the brand manager.
Okay.
So no matter what, part of the business or function you're in, ultimately the leaders of that organization are brand managers. They're marketers.
Yep.
And that really sparked that interest to say, this marketing thing is kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is kind of interesting.
So I was going to say, you made the leap from engineering over to brand and into marketing. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the interest started really with me doing consumer research.
Okay.
So the type of role I was doing as an engineer was trying to understand what did consumers want from products. And that helped me to better design those products to meet their needs.
Sure.
So that's really a market research function. So I'm spending time with brand managers, I'm spending time with marketers all the time, day in, day out. And that started to spark an interest of moving and navigating my career into a different space. And here comes the MBA. the opportunity to kind of shift my career, go study business, education again, that foundation from my father, and say, hey, I want to go do an MBA and I want to shift my career into a different path. And so that's what sparked it, was just working with those brand managers and those marketers, and then ultimately the MBA enabled the ability for me to make a real big pivot.
Tell me about that experience of getting your MBA. I certainly remember what I went through, but I'm curious about your experience, just kind of going through that process.
Yeah, well, it was different for me because it was part-time. Okay, so
you were working full-time.
I was working full-time, and on top of that, I was actually spending a lot of time overseas. I was working on projects in Asia, so I was flying back and forth. I'm on the plane, and I'm also, preparing, looking at case studies and preparing for exams. So it was a very difficult and tough role, but I think it was the thing that worked best for me to do it part-time and still be able to continue to get experiences at P&G, which is a great, fantastic company.
Sure. Do you remember any particular aha moments that came out of that experience?
Absolutely. As I got into those marketing courses, I was constantly raising my hand and asking questions. And I looked around the room and I kind of started to understand, I actually know marketing already, because I was sitting in those rooms with those brand managers at P&G, and that really helped me to build that confidence to say, I can really do this. I can do this. I can move and navigate into a career in the marketing space.
Yeah, it's fast. I remember for me, I had similar experience and came to understand that I needed to focus on accounting and finance. Like that for me was kind of an aha that said, this is kind of a gap in your background, and you better get it, or you're going to stumble as you go forward. So, so that kind of thing can be really valuable part of the experience. But sort of then leaving there, I noticed kind of going through your background that you've worked for a number of private equity-backed companies along the way. And so how has that experience been as compared to working for a publicly traded corporation? How's that? How have you found that to be?
I mean, I think just in general, it really depends, right? In a publicly traded company, sometimes you're going for a little bit slower growth. Sometimes there's a lot more risk at play, and so there's not maybe as much innovation and trying to drive towards an end goal, which might be an IPO or an acquisition or a divestiture. When you're in a private equity space, sometimes the focus and the goal can be on how do I get to an end goal of, going to an IPO or divesting the business or selling the business or merging with another partner. So the focus is a little bit different from the ownership. And that's fundamentally probably what I've seen as being different. Yep. But innovation and transformation can take place in either of those environments.
Sure, got it. Okay. And how about I noticed as well, you've gone from P&G to American Airlines to Greyhound buses to Neiman Marcus and a couple of interesting stops in between. What is the common thread that runs through those experiences for you that really kind of defines who you are as an executive and as a leader?
Yeah, I think at surface, a lot of people might look at that and say, that's a lot of different industries, a lot of different companies. How did you kind of hop from one place to the next place? For me, the common thread was the customer.
Sure.
Innate passion and focus on the customer.
Right.
And so at P&G, it was understanding what the customer wanted out of a product, okay, and then doing market research and understanding that functionally. How do you craft a piece of research in order to get the right kind of insight? When I fast forward and get into the travel space, a lot of it was about customer experience.
Sure.
And so understanding what was happening as a customer is on their full customer journey, and then trying to manage that customer experience appropriately, but still focus on the customer. And then moving into retail, there's a lot of focus on things like CRM. There's a lot of focus on analytics that helps to drive insights to help drive business strategy and customer engagement. But at the end of the day, the single common thread is customer, customer, customer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty insightful. I appreciate that. And when we were talking before we came on camera, one of the things we talked about was sort of conversations that you have with mentees and others around that that journey, but the part of the journey that is not just moving from industry to industry, but also from level to level. And so, moving from manager to director to vice president and on. I mean, what are some pieces of counsel or things that you've learned along the way that, that helped you along that path?
I mean, for me, first and foremost, it's been a journey. And that journey has been peaks, valleys, winding roads, which has been difficult and hard at some times. And in some cases, things happened and I didn't expect for it to happen that quickly. So it's been a journey is how I would describe it. Not really climbing the ladder, but a true journey. I think a couple things that come to mind in terms of that journey. One is a willingness for me to take risk. So it was a risk to say, you're gonna leave an engineering profession, pays well, you're doing well in this space, and take a risk to move over into an industry in travel that's a bit more volatile, and then marketing that's a little bit less stable.
Sure.
And so there was a risk associated with that. The second thing I would say is not allowing others to define that path for me.
Yeah.
And I had mentors, I had managers who at times, let's say in that transition going from engineer to marketer, who were naysayers. And not in a bad way, but they wanted to kind of protect me.
Yeah.
And one of the key things I think in trying to navigate your career in advance, you got to set your own path.
Yeah.
You have got to be focused and set your own path. If you don't, then other people will define it for you.
Yeah, I think amen to that. I mean, I think that's a really important thing. Can you give an example of when you maybe had one of those inflection points where you had to make the decision to make a move for yourself that might have appeared to be contrary to the way that the tides were moving, but it was right for you?
Yeah, Greyhound.
Okay.
Hands down. And so I think if you look at kind of my resume and background, I worked for a lot of large companies where the brands were very well thought of.
Yep.
And Greyhound's brand candidly was tarnished.
Yep.
And making a move to Greyhound was risky. But I had the opportunity to go work for a former manager of mine who I knew was excellent, who laid out an opportunity for me to have a lot of breadth and responsibility. It was actually less money. I want to be clear about that.
Oh, wow.
It was less money.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was an opportunity for me to take more reins and take more ownership over a broader set of responsibilities. So in some ways, it felt like a potential step backwards. But I was thinking about 2 to 3 steps from that job, what would happen.
Sure.
And so the opportunity to have such a broad set of responsibilities in loyalty, CRM, analytics, market and customer research, and ultimately the organization ended up allowing me to take the reins for all of marketing. So getting into the paid media space and operating as the chief marketing officer. Had I stayed on that trajectory that I was on, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
Yeah.
And it's because a company like Greyhound allowed and afforded that opportunity because they were in a more risky position. So that was in a kind of an inflection point for me in the career.
Sure. How do you develop the courage, the professional courage to make those kinds of moves? How do you sort of find that inside of yourself to do that?
I love this question. I talk to a lot of people who are on direct reports of mine or team members about this all the time. You should be able to look at a job that you want to advance into and know that you have the skill set and capability to actually do the job. And you're actually already demonstrating. And when you have that level of confidence that you can look at a job that's at the next level and say, I'm already doing 80% of the things that are at that level, you'll have the courage to step into it.
Yep.
And so you should start demonstrating. You should look at what are the behaviors and what are the things that people at that next level, what are they doing? You should start doing those things now to build that courage to be able to step into that place. And when you go look at a job and you say, hey, should I apply to this or not? You look at it and you say, I'm already doing 80% of this. Of course I can apply for this job.
Right, right. That's amazing. Well, let's fast forward to today. Tell me, I want to know a little bit more about what's going on today in your role, but especially like what you're challenged by in the role that you're in today.
Yeah, right now, very heavy focus on loyalty and personalization transformation within the Neiman Marcus Group.
Okay.
And so there's some big enterprise projects. We've actually had a couple of days of full day meetings with cross-functional teams. And what we're challenged with right now is transformation management.
Okay.
And so I think we've got a good strategy. I think we have good technical solutions. Where we have challenges is how do we transform our operation to support and drive long-term success once we flip the switches on, new technology and new capability. And I think sometimes that can be an afterthought in organizations.
Sure.
How do I appropriately organize the teams? How do I change the business processes in order to support the new way that we need to work to make this successful? And so we're spending a lot of time right now really from a process perspective organizing how we need to transform in the next 365 days to be prepared for some of this transformation. And it's critical work, it's hard work, and a lot of times people leave it to the end of a project. And you can't do that.
Right.
That's gonna deter the ability for you to hit the ground running and really truly be successful.
Right. So what can we expect out of some of this transformation that you're working on?
I think building deeper relationships with our customers, driving more retention from our customers, and our customers really seeing a lot more from us that they feel is very valuable on a day in, day out basis. Again, it comes back to customer engagement.
Sure.
Can we tell them or give that customer the right message at the right time that helps them understand, like, we know you, we hear you, we understand who you are, and just getting better at that.
Yeah.
I think we do a fantastic job today in our relationships, especially with our sales associates, face-to-face, and the clienteling relationships are fantastic. I think we have a ways to go in terms of some of the digital opportunities in that space, and that's what we're going to be working on.
Got it. What would you say, how would you articulate the difference in the value proposition that the Neiman Marcus Group offers to its customers as opposed to your next closest competitor? How would you look at that and say, this is kind of our thing where we really shine, or where the customer's looking for us to perform?
I think first and foremost for our merchandising partners that are in the crowd today, we have different merchandise than some of our competitors do carry. And so we carry some exclusives. We carry a portion of the assortment that is different, that is very luxurious, and we carry some brands that some of our competitors don't carry. So that's number one. We have product that some of our competitors don't have. I would say number two, relationship. We truly are in a relationship business, and some of our sales associates and relationships that they have with their customers, it is a one-to-one, highly relevant, highly personalized relationship, and you just can't replicate that easily.
Yeah.
We also attract some of the best talent across the retail industry. One of the things I learned when I first joined the Bergdorf Goodman team and went out to Bergdorf Goodman store was that the creme de la creme, the top of retail in New York City, is in Bergdorf Goodman.
Sure.
These are folks who have worked at all the other places that you could possibly imagine, and that dream job is to actually land at Bergdorf Goodman. That type of experience you can't replicate.
Right.
So I think those are a couple of the things, a couple of the nuggets that just makes this place magical.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so as you work through the transformation, what are the tools or resources or even teammates? Like what are the pieces of that puzzle that will, speaking kind of technically, right? That are going to make that possible?
Yeah, I think it comes down to understanding project management, transformation management, some support from the outside from experts that can help train and teach us how to better perform in transformation. And it really is about planning.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a lot of what we're doing right now is putting the energy in on planning and making sure that we're not missing any component. So if you think about something like, hey, I'm gonna enhance my loyalty program. Well, I need to appropriately train all of those frontline associates on what's new and what's different and how do you sell this new program to the customers and showcase to them what is the value associated with that. You can't think about training 2 months prior to launching. You have to think about the training now. So planning is a big piece of the puzzle that we're working on right now that I think is going to be what helps us be really successful.
Got it. So let's shift gears just a little bit. I was flying down yesterday, and I was doing some reading about the headwinds that we're all experiencing as it relates to DEI. I am frankly puzzled by it. It is nonsensical to me. But I wonder, how Neiman Marcus Group is experiencing that, how you're preparing to face that.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak from personal,
Sure.
the personal side of it. When I think about Neiman Marcus Group, I think first and foremost about belonging.
Yep.
And to me, belonging is being able to bring your full authentic self to the table, being accepted, but more importantly, being heard and valued.
Yep.
And for me in my job, what that means is that my leadership brings me into the room to be consulted on key business decisions, on key organizational decisions. And I've had a fantastic experience since I've been here almost 2 years, where I have a management team that has consistently brought me in and consulted with me and values my opinion.
Sure.
That is fundamentally,
Yeah.
at an individual level, it creates this sense of belonging to the organization.
Sure.
And so for me as a leader in the company, I in turn do the same thing with not only my team and my direct reports, but everyone surrounded around me cross-functionally to ensure that, hey, here's a person who's an expert in this particular space. How do we ensure that their voice is being heard in the process, early in the process too, not
Sure.
as an afterthought.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's a core central part of the puzzle. I do want to take a step back to also say that for Neiman Marcus Group, our approach to hiring and allowing individuals to work from anywhere, whether that is in this Dallas hub, we have a New York hub, or if that's working from home, or if that's working from a vacation spot, that they are able to do that. That allows us and allows the ability for us to recruit individuals a very different way all across the country. And I know a lot of companies are faced with the pipeline.
Sure.
So of course you have to work through everything once you have your employees in place. You also have to work on the pipeline.
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult to work on the pipeline when you're restricted to, I'm recruiting locally only.
Yeah. Well, and I like the way you frame that from a standpoint of belonging. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that we have experienced is that a large portion of our members in the National Black MBA Association are very interested in entrepreneurship. Yeah. And there's a couple of sort of threads of thought that I have there is that we think about why do people want to pursue entrepreneurship? I think for good reasons many times, wealth creation, but it also has to do with belonging.
Yes.
I want to be able to express my interest and my expertise in a way that maybe I feel like I won't be able to in a larger organization. But by the same token, the most successful of entrepreneurs will create large corporations that either they're then recruiting people to come work for or get folded into companies like the Neiman Marcus Group. And so, but the idea of belonging is really something I think is very central to all of that. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what I hear from my peers, especially those who have navigated their career for 20 plus years. There sometimes can be that sense of, hey, I might be in a place right now where I can't bring my full authentic self and kind of do the things that I know that I can do in this particular environment. And so there is that drive and that motivation. What I've also found though is that some of those folks actually shouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
They actually are better at navigating within a corporate environment or working somewhere else. And so I think that we got to try to figure out the balance of how do we continue the fight internal, while some may choose that, hey, I want to continue the fight external.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said as well. So talk to me about sort of making the most of the role that you're in. And sometimes it's a great fit. Sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge. I think about the folks who are here with us today and who are watching online. How do you make the most of the role that you're in, and then when do you know when it's time to consider another opportunity?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, do your job and do it phenomenally well, so that you are known for the expertise that you bring to the table, and you create visibility with that so people understand that. And I think the second thing is, while you're in that role, take full advantage of the other opportunities for you to lead, which might not be in the direct space of your direct responsibility. It could be through affinity groups, it could be through employee groups, it could be through projects where you volunteer yourself to work on a particular project and initiative and can show leadership in a different way. So I think while you're within the organization, you're in a particular role, I think you should do that.
Sure.
I think when you come to a point where you say, hey, long term, here is really where I need to be, where I want to be, 5 years, 10 years from now, you need to assess consistently, is the role that I'm in today serving me to get me to that place? And if the answer to that is no, then it's probably time for you to start looking to leave and to move on to something else that will get you to that longer term goal. I think one of the things I'll rewind to mention again is not being short-sighted.
Sure.
You know, the Greyhound example, thinking about those roles 2 to 3 steps in advance. What can I do next that will set me up 2 to 3 jobs from now to be where I really want to be?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important. I think not only thinking ahead, but also recognizing that very few roles are permanent.
Yeah.
Very few roles will be the one you retire from.
Right.
And so being definitive or thoughtful about sort of how long this position, this opportunity you're in is serving you, whether there's an opportunity inside the organization or outside of the organization, where being intentional about that can really make a big difference.
Yeah, one other thing I'll just mention.
Yeah.
There's a natural cycle in most businesses. And so if you're a person like myself, I focus a lot on transformation, innovation with that thread of customer. So usually organizations who want my skill set usually are going through some kind of transformation. They need someone who can make changes. But there will be a natural point where the transformation is done and you're really kind of managing kind of business as usual. If you operate that way, you should be looking at the cycle and saying that once that cycle is dying down, I probably should be looking for what is my next opportunity. That might look different for everyone who's watching today in terms of what that cycle is, but there are cycles in business that goes up and down, up and down.
I think that's, as they would say in church, I think that's a word, right? I mean, I think, that all of us should be thinking about not only the cycle of the business that we're in, but also our own personal cycle. Right. So where is the sweet spot within that role or within that business where we are able to perform at our highest and best? And that's not at all, that's not necessarily at all points of the cycle, not for everyone. And so I think that's an interesting observation. So before we go to some questions, I wonder if there are a couple of leadership nuggets that you'd be willing to share, things maybe that aren't the things that are talked about or asked about often, but you find to be particularly helpful.
I think number one, as a leader, as a people manager, you should meet your people where they're at. And what I mean by that is folks who've got MBAs and are very focused on their career and very driven. You may have individuals in your organization who are fine exactly where they are. They're not looking to be promoted. They're not looking for additional responsibility, but they do a great job at what they do. They're specialists, they're experts. You need to figure out how to engage with them, keep them happy, and retain them because they're important to the business. Don't ignore them because they're not the superstars who are trying to climb the ladder that you feel like you can help grow and develop. And I think I've seen a lot of leaders kind of ignore some of those folks in the organization. They're the glue of any organization that you're working with. They're the ones who know everything. They're the ones who are the expert holders. You can't afford to lose them, right? So that's number one. I think the last one for me is a little underrated as a kind of leadership principle, and it's accountability. We have a lot of finger pointing that goes on in our institutions and our broader society, and I think that's spilled into the business world where there's a lack of accountability when things don't go right. You take all accountability when it's going fantastic, but when things don't go right, you don't raise your hand and say, here's what we did wrong, here's exactly what happened, and here's what we're gonna do differently so it doesn't happen again. And I think that the more leaders can show accountability, you're gonna stand out in your organization, you're gonna stand out in a very good way. Because ultimately good leadership, good CEOs, good C-suite executives, they recognize the people who take accountability, not only when it's a successful outcome, but also when something didn't go right.
Sure, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So we're gonna take some questions. Maybe y'all can help me figure out how we're gonna do this. All right.
Well, thank you, Henry, Darrin. This question is coming from the audience here at the Dallas Hub. You spoke a little on CRM and analytics, advancement in marketing. What would be your suggestion if you are seeing the same analytic advancement in finance but your leadership team doesn't seem in tune to the vision.
Yeah. First and foremost, it's not just about the data, okay? It's not just about the insight and information. It's how you can communicate it and connect it to the broader business objective. So if at the moment, the core business objective is, let's say, a heavy focus on profitability. I'm just giving you that as an example. That might not be the time to say, we need to do these 3 investments that are going to cost tens of millions of dollars. That might not be the right moment. It doesn't mean don't hold it for later on. You can come back to it and circle back 6 months when the business changes. But you have to recognize what's happening broadly in the business and at that moment in time. And if you're not doing that, sometimes your message can fall on deaf ears.
And I think I'll add while we're waiting for another question. I mean, I think you made a point earlier that I'll paraphrase. I had a friend that used to say, if you want to have them on landing, you got to have them on takeoff. And so in terms of folks not being attuned to the vision, I think one of the key elements there is to engage folks in the discussion of where we're going early, so that they have the opportunity to allow the vision to grow with them, to understand how it applies to their role and their job.
Right.
And then can raise their voice and kind of provide their input into that process, so that as the vision unfolds, it's theirs also.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Amber Fleet. So Darrin, my question is 2 parts. One, you mentioned on your journey, the CRM, marketing research, all has what kept your passion, but as you continue to elevate in your field and here at Neiman's, what is still that one aspect of marketing that keeps your gears going, gets you excited, that you always want to revert back to? And then the second part is, since being here a part of the Neiman Marcus Group, what is your favorite item or guilty pleasure to purchase?
Okay. So I'll start with the first question. Ultimately for me, because I'm a customer guy, it still comes back to customer and marketing research. So we have a fantastic team within Neiman Marcus Group that does excellent research, and I'm probably one of the top people who requests, new research from that team, and is always trying to find them funding. That is still a passion area for me, 100%. For me, guilty pleasure, and I don't even want to call it guilty, because I get an opportunity to go up to Bergdorf Goodman. My guilty pleasure is actually Goodman's bar within the sort, because there's amazing bartenders that make some of the best drinks I've ever had, even across New York City. So for me, I'm a foodie, and I'm really into whiskey and bourbon drinks and cocktails. So that is actually my guilty pleasure.
What are a couple of your favorite bourbons?
Uncle Nearest.
1856 or 84?
84.
Really? I love the 56.
Both of them are great.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. Which gets back to that entrepreneurial side of the house with what Fawn Weaver is doing. Is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's awesome. We'll plug. Fawn is going to be speaking at our conference in September in DC. So yeah, we're excited about the things that are going on at Uncle Nearest. Yeah, so you got to support Uncle Nearest for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you need a speaker, Darrin is willing. This one is coming from the chat. How does Neiman Marcus or Neiman Marcus Group execute on brand loyalty and retention through strategies and tactics?
Yeah, I mean, I think for brand loyalty, I think our leading edge is really how our sales associates live the brand with the customer, face to face, day in, day out. And I'll talk about Bergdorf Goodman and bringing magic. It's a magical place if you've never visited, but the sales associates are really what makes that magic come to life, and that's that core brand principle. And it's because they'll do anything for those individuals. That can be, hey, you have a wedding, the dress is going to be completed from an alterations perspective, on a particular day. They'll drive it out to the Hamptons for you so that it's available at the right time, even if it was a last minute alterations. It's doing these above and beyond things that really kind of lives up to the core of the brand. And I think right now our major focus is through the associate, and it's our key differentiator.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, I think we have somebody here.
Hi, my name is Lauren Johnson, and I just wanted to ask you, Darrin, as someone who is in her college years approaching the finish line, I'm sure there's so many people who are just like myself, aspiring to be a part of the environment and the evolving company that Neiman Marcus is always pursuing and putting first for new and incoming individuals to be a part of it. And as someone who was also wanting to be one of those new incoming people sooner than later in her life, what would you tell the younger audience or future generations joining Neiman Marcus, and what you would want them to know to pursue whatever they aspire to do in their career and be a part of such an amazing environment?
Yeah, I would say when you're young in your career, be flexible. There might be something that you really want to do and you're really passionate about. And so let's say you might want to be a merchant, you might want to work on ladies' shoes as an example, and that's your passion area. And there just isn't a role available. Be flexible, put your foot in the door. Show what you can do and what you can deliver, and you'll get the opportunity. Your career is going to be long. You'll get the opportunity. You actually might find that there's something that you start working on that I didn't know I was passionate about this. I didn't know that this was something that could interest me. One of the things, if I think about the navigation in my career and all the things I worked on Sunny Delight, I worked on Pringles, I worked on Herbal Essence, I worked on Aussie, I worked on American Airlines, I worked on Hotels.com, I worked on Greyhound buses. That is all over the place, and I found interest in all of those things, because when you peek under the covers, there's always going to be something interesting, insightful, that's going to get you excited to get up day in, day out. So I would just say, be flexible.
What would you say was the biggest value that you derived from getting your MBA?
I think first and foremost, it's a way of thinking. It was important to get, let's say, for example, finance and accounting was an area that I just didn't have experience with. And so when I go into rooms and I sit with the finance manager and I'm talking about my budget, I know a little bit more. If I'm talking about with my accounting team about liability that they're putting on the balance sheet for the loyalty program, I have a little bit more insight because of what I learned, doing the MBA. But more important than that was just a way of thinking and the way that the business mind works and how people in business think. And I think that was like the most valuable thing for me in an MBA. One other item I would say is just, working together with team members in case studies. I think that was also very important to me. I had the opportunity in work to also collaborate, but the collaboration within the MBA with a variety of different personalities and attitudes, and that was very critical and important to my growth as well.
Sure, yeah, I get it. I had the same experience. Mm-hmm. Think you have a question?
I do. Hi, my name is Nina Alston. How important is mentorship for you in business, and who are some influential leaders that have helped to shape your career?
Okay, so I probably have like a very interesting take on this. I've never had like a person that person is my mentor and that's it. They were either a friend, a former colleague, a former manager, a current manager, some leader in the company. That's usually who I personally always leaned on, because they had a better sense and understanding of where I was in my career, what was happening around me. And so that was just personally for me, that's kind of more what I leaned on. I've had tons of different, informal mentors throughout my entire career. I probably would say that, a couple of them that come to mind, one that was at American Airlines, who really spent time with me preparing me for organizational leadership and really helped me to think about, when you go from being an individual contributor to a manager, to a director, to a vice president, what needs to change in terms of your focus? And so when you're a vice president in a company, it's about how do you structure the organization? How do you empower people? How do you lead? How do you communicate? You shift from technical skills and you are really focused on people. And she was the first one to really tell me that, was that, hey, it's a little less for me in my position about managing up and proving and showing what I can do technically versus how I get my people to perform and how I empower them to do a fantastic job. That's going to reflect positively on me because it's about the organization. And so I learned that when I first became a manager from that mentor. I didn't have to stumble through things because she really kind of, helped me through that process.
But it's interesting. I'm so glad you said that about kind of the many mentors as opposed to the one or two. I've always felt a little bit like an oddball because I've never had a mentor, but I have had many people who have deposited into me in my career at different points along the way to give me a little bit more information. Right. Some that I looked up to, some who were sitting right next to me. And I always felt like that was a little. People talk about their mentor, and I kind of go, I don't have that experience. But I think maybe for the folks who are listening, maybe some have mentors, one or two that are just that person. Yeah. But maybe others have a bunch of people that they lean on for different elements, and I think that's okay too. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Hear me now? Okay, perfect. You spoke about mentorship, but I would like to explore another topic similar. Can you speak about whether you've had sponsors? I think it's really important for the next generation to understand the difference between mentorship and sponsorship and what that looks like. And can you talk about, have you experienced that in your careers? Either one of you.
I'll kick off to say that when I talked about starting at P&G, I was truly blessed to have started in an organization like that. I learned about sponsorship in my first year out of undergrad because we had people pulling us aside and say, hey, you know what a mentor is? Yeah, of course. Do you know what a sponsor is? I don't know. A super mentor? I'm not sure, right? And so sponsorship, I think, is so important because it's advocacy. And it usually is a person who actually has a seat at the table who can help in decisioning. So what's happening with leaders across any organization is that they're talking about their people and who's performing well and who's doing well. You need a person who's in the room who says, oh, do you know about Darrin? No, I've never heard of him. Let me tell you what he's been doing. And that person should not be your manager. It should be someone else who is advocating on your behalf and actually has a voice in the room. Which it really does speak to the importance of not just being solely focused on your manager as the person that you're trying to showcase your talent to. You need to showcase your talent broadly across the organization because then you'll end up with a sponsor. And so fundamentally, I think the sponsorship piece, whether you know it as like the naming of it, you know that it's happening. And so appreciate the question because it's a very important one.
Yeah, it can be very valuable in terms of making sure not only you get where you are trying to go, but also that the organization gets where it's trying to go. And I've certainly had that experience in my previous role where someone essentially said, not only am I going to sponsor you, but together we're going to make sure that this project gets done. And it was a huge benefit to moving that along, and I'm forever grateful for that. And so it really can be an important part of your journey.
Yeah.
Final comments from Henry or Darrin?
Well, Darrin, I just want to say thank you. I mean, this has been a fabulous experience being here at the Neiman Marcus Group Dallas Hub, and really appreciate you taking the time to share so much with us and our audience. And we're so glad that you're a part of the National Black MBA Association and that the Neiman Marcus Group is a part of the work that we're doing. And so thank you so much for having us and for being a part of it. Please share the last words. Yeah.
Appreciate it. No, I hopefully this conversation was a discussion that people felt was insightful and helpful in any way. And I would just gladly say, hey, if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn that's watching this, I'll gladly connect with you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.